Howdy everybody, welcome back. I'm Matt, thanks for stopping by. Now I got a really quick pattern for you today for a couple of reasons. So first, I've spent all day just trying to get my server and email set up at savageflies.com to get the online store ready to go by January 1st. So good news, I think I'm going to get there. And not so good news, I kind of messed up my email. So I lost the last 6 or 7 weeks worth of email. So if you've sent me an email in the last few weeks and I haven't responded, maybe just send it again or bear with me. Hopefully I'll recover them and get back to you. So about today's pattern, I got it from Federation of Fly Fishers, Pattern Encyclopedia, and in here it was tied by a guy named Floyd Frankie. Now I don't think Floyd created this pattern. I did a search of him online and the only thing I could come up with was that he was one of the creators of the Catskill Fly Tyers Guild in the 1990s, and he does have a pattern out there called the Frankie Shiner, which obviously that's a streamer, and the bug I'm tying here today is a dry fly, and it shows up in the Pattern Encyclopedia under the stonefly section, but it's a little bit odd in that the recipe only has it in one size, and that's a size 18. So it's a pretty small pattern, but it's a really cool looking bug. And it's not hard to tie, no exotic materials, a little bit of yellow foam for the body, some Grizzly Hackle up front, and it does have snowshoe hare for a wing, which if you don't have a light colored snowshoe hare, I'd just recommend using something synthetic, maybe a Zelon or some kind of parapost. I think that would work fine. So it's a really quick tie, but a pretty cool looking bug, and I think y'all are gonna like it. Let's give it a shot. So there it is in the vise, one of several flies called the Trout Candy. This is as tied by Floyd Frankie in the Fly Pattern Encyclopedia. Now the recipe only calls for one size, an 18. So let's get this tiny little hook in here. Okay, and if you aren't sure how small an 18 is, there's a dime. It's a pretty small little hook here. Now I'm going to use some brown thread. That is what the recipe says. I'm using my go-to 70 denier. I toyed with the idea of using a yellow thread because of that yellow body, and I'm thinking maybe with the yellow thread you wouldn't see it. I'm thinking you might see it with the brown, but the one I just tied you really didn't, so I'm not going to worry about it. There's a 2mm yellow foam cut about a hook gap, so a hook gap wide, and I will try to put a little notch on the front just to make it easier to tie in. So get a little point like that right there. Take my thread back up to where I want to catch that in. Remember, we've got a little bit of a wing and a hackle up here. So let's catch this in right up here. And it's going to have a tendency to want to spin around on you. And that's fine. I wouldn't worry too much about it. If it does, just spin it back. So let's get it on and then take our thread back to where we want to, catch one more, almost like a segment of a hopper. So right back here, I think that's going to be fine. And I'm going to put one wrap right here. And if you do it right, you'll keep it on the top of the hook, and you'll also bury that brown thread. So you won't necessarily see this brown thread. But what you do need to keep in mind, these tiny hooks, be careful not to close that gap up too much. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to put one more wrap right in the middle, and then that kind of will help keep me from closing that gap up. So we can go ahead and do one more right there. Now get it back up front where we're going to catch in the wing. So take a look at it. You don't see a whole lot of that brown thread. I think we're fine right there. But what I am going to do, I'm going to cut this to length, and I'm going to cut it at a little bit of a point right here. So it's kind of long. Right there's one slice. Let's try another one right here. Okay, now we got a little bit of a pointy butt end on that guy. I think we're going to be just fine. So let's get our thread back, right to the front there, where we're going to catch in some snowshoe hare's feet for this wing. Now, if you don't have a snowshoe hare, I'd encourage you to get some of this stuff. It's really kind of cool. It looks a little bit like calftail, but I don't think you could substitute calftail for this guy. It would just be too long and too hard to use. So if I didn't have a hare's foot, snowshoe hare's foot, I would probably just use a synthetic. use something synthetic that's going to give you that lighter colored and kind of maybe a polypropylene parapost or something like that. So get that caught in with a couple wraps, at least as long as your foam. Now we can trim this front up here. Okay, that didn't trim all that well, but we can take care of that. A couple more snips and we should be good to go. Okay, we might end up with needing a little bit of cleanup in the end, but for right now, I think we're good. I'm gonna put a couple more wraps right here just to try to smooth this little lump out right here. Make it a little bit easier to wrap my hackle. And for the hackle, just get the smallest dry fly hackle you have in Grizzly is what the pattern calls for. And you don't want it to be too much past the hook point or you'll again risk closing off that hook. So I think let's go about right there. And I'm going to catch this in. I'm going to try to get the concave side toward the hook if I can. And if I can't, I'm not going to worry about it. Such a tiny fly, but I do want a little bit of that bare stem showing. So I've got 2 wraps on. I'll pull it up just a hair so that my first wrap should lay a little bit smoother. Now, I don't want my thread all the way up there to the eye. I want to catch it off maybe about right there. So leave a little bit of room for a head. And I think we're going to get about 4 wraps. We'll see what 4 wraps looks like after we do it. There's the first full complete one. Okay, do I want to go one more? I'm thinking no, I do not. I've got enough hackle on here. Let's go ahead and catch this thing off with a couple wraps. I could have probably fit one more on there, but then I'm really risking clobbering my eye. So what I'm going to do here to help avoid clobbering the eye, before I snip that off, I'm going to just try and pull all of these back and then take a couple of wraps going back to make a little bit of room for my whip finish. I'm not having a lot of luck right there because this hook is so small. I'm going to just have to go in here and snip this stem and then a couple of those forward leaning fibers. I got a little stub right there, but I think I can take care of that. I'm going to cord up my thread, spin it clockwise, and then just take a few wraps going back. I don't want the head to get too big on me, but this is thin thread, so I can get a few extra wraps and get away with it. But I do want my thread at the back of the head before I start this whip finish. My thread is fairly corded up right now, and I'm going to just try to get this whip finish right at the back of that head. 4 turns will be fine. And if I can do that without trapping any fibers going forward, I'll be in good shape. And I think we did. So let's take our scissors, just kind of slide them up that thread, and then saw it off. And we'll take a look, see if we have any cleanup. I don't have any fibers going too crazy on me, so I think we're in fine shape. We haven't closed off that hook gap too much right there, maybe just a little bit, but I think we're still fine. This is a decent fishable fly. So a little drop of head cement right there, and this thing is good to go. So that's it, everybody. I appreciate you watching. Y'all take care, and we'll see you next time.